Thank you. Welcome to Unity in Marin. And I love gospel, so I like that. Like that feel. And last Thursday was Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of the Unity movement. It was his birthday. And so that was where the Daily Word came from. And the dream of Charles Fillmore, going back to 1923, probably sooner than that, was that we would all be one, that we would all be working together with one mind. Charles Fillmore and Myrtle Fillmore knew that since there's only one power and one presence, active as our lives and as the universe, God the good omnipotence, which is our first basic unity principle, that the second principle must be true, which means that that presence shows up as each and every one of us, that each and every one of us are the outpicturing of that spiritual presence. So we are all one. We are all really one. Some of you came when I taught about the Kabbalah a few weeks ago, and my mentor teacher, Rabbi Nissim Warnick, was quoting from Leviticus 19:18. Now, Jesus also quoted from this passage of Scripture, and you'll recognize it. Love your neighbor as yourself. And then he said, the reason you love your neighbor as yourself is because your neighbor is yourself. That what affects one affects all, because we really are one. We really are. You know that the Shema that starts Shabbat in the Jewish synagogue, in Hebrew, it goes like this. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. That word Echad means, okay, so in English, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You've heard probably a number of you that passage. It can also be translated this way. The Lord our God, the Lord is oneness. The Lord our God, the Lord is unity. Singularity. Think of it that way. We are all one. We're all in this together. What affects one of us affects all of us. But it's real easy to think that if it's not personally happening to me, then it's not happening to anybody else. But I've never been able to accept that. I've never been able to. Sometimes I wish I could. At times I wish that I didn't feel the pain that others were experiencing. But I've learned that it's a blessing that that wasn't the case for me. When I was in 7th grade at John Marshall Junior High School in Wichita, Kansas, I had a friend of mine, Steve Moore. And Steve was a short person, very likable, very kind, gregarious, and short. And because of that, he would sometimes get picked on. And I can remember being in the balcony of the gymnasium at John Marshall, and there was a group of guys our age that were picking on Steve. They were trying to pick a fight with him. They were saying nasty things to him, rude things to him. I remember thinking, I wish I could ignore this, but I can't. Something inside of me was standing up and saying, this is not right. It is not right how he's being treated. Somehow, the way he is being treated affects me. I didn't understand how, but somehow I knew what happened to him was happening to me. I couldn't ignore it. So I stood up for him. And then this group was like, oh, you want to stand up for him, huh? So then they took me on. And at this time in my life, I was very shy, backward, but I knew the truth in me, and I knew I needed to stand up in that truth. I hope you've gotten that truth, that what affects one affects us all. It could be someone of a different faith tradition. It could be someone of a different ethnicity. It could be someone that may look or act very different from you. But we are all one. That is our second unity principle, that all of us are the outpicturing of the divine presence. So when we get in touch with that divine presence within, that is wonderful. And we know that it connects with the spiritual presence in every other person. So when we practice our meditation, when we practice our affirmations and denials, when we practice our spiritual study, and we go deep within, we are connecting with the endless, the timeless. We are connecting with that which oversees and supersedes any materiality or physicality. We're tapping into the very presence of God, living itself as us, waking up as us at every moment. You are giving birth to the presence of God right this moment. You are the presence of God in action. You are the presence of God that is wanting to come forth and express itself. And I am convinced that one of the mental and spiritual illnesses of our time is that people do not realize that they are this spiritual presence. They don't know who they are. They're in a state of spiritual amnesia. And we're here to wake up and help encourage each other to wake up. But it's not something that's just for ourselves alone. I know that, and I've practiced and taught meditation for years, and there have been times where I've gone into deep states of oneness and trance called samadhi in Sanskrit. Just these wonderful times of knowing the presence. And it's like, oh, wow, or you just know what you really are. But it's not just for ourselves alone. We're not here just for us. There's a reason why there's more than one of us on the planet. We're here to be the light to each other. Jesus called us the salt of the earth. How many of you have salt shakers at home? Really? Only about 10 of you? Really? Now maybe you've cut down on your sodium. But the thing with salt is when it's sitting in the shaker, it doesn't do a whole lot of good. I mean, it's still salty. It's still good. It's still salt, but it's not applied. It's not in any way usable until it comes out of the shaker. In the same way, we can get in touch with our spiritual presence within, but if it isn't affecting our life, if it isn't touching the lives of those around us, we're like salt in the salt shaker, saying, oh, I'm so salty. Oh, I can get in touch with my inner saltiness. Ooh, you are so salty. But if we want it to do some good, we get the salt out of the salt shaker. We get it out. So, unity is not about only the inner journey. It is very much about that, but it's also about the outer journey. They go together. If we're really experiencing inner transformation, we also experience outer transformation. We are also interacting using these principles in the world. Now, I want to Thursday was Charles Fillmore's birthday. Charles Fillmore. Yeah, there's Charles. No, that's not Charles. Friday was Krishna's birthday. And Krishna's come in various forms and manifestations. And he comes because he loves us. And He comes because it's not good enough for him to just be in peace and bliss out there in the great somewhere, but because when Krishna sees a need, he steps into it and he appears. In the same way, each one of us is called to step up and to step out. Are you a secret agent? Are you a secret agent? There might be some here. A secret agent, in the spiritual sense, would be someone who knows these principles and is nurturing them, but nobody knows about it. They're going incognito, like with sunglasses. Like, hope no one sees my spirituality today. But if we're really getting in touch with it, it will show, it will come out. It has to. You can't keep it in. We need to let it out. Get it out of the shaker. I want to show this passage of Scripture from James chapter 2. This comes from a translation called The Voice. Sometimes I really like how The Voice. The Voice is a translation of a combination of Bible scholars and artists, drama experts. And they came together to put together an accurate translation that also presents the drama that is being written. So it says, removing action from faith is like removing breath from a body. All you have left is a corpse. Action. That's the title for today, action. Our power for the month is will. Will is the power to choose. And we choose whether or not to act. I had a choice in 7th grade whether or not to act on behalf of my friend Steve. I had a choice about it, but I knew from the strong sense of what was going on within me that I needed to act. So we have a choice about whether to act or not. You are God in action. Repeat after me. I am God in action. Do you feel a little responsibility when you hear that? Like, whoa, wait a minute, not so much. I'm just me. I'm just one little person here. I have all these different ailments or different, and not so much education, or maybe financially not so much. How can I be God in action? Just by being you. Just by being what you really are. You are the presence of God. You're here to bring that forth. That's why Jesus called you the salt of the earth. That's why Jesus called you the light of the world. You know? It's amazing. That's why in Islam, they teach us that each one of us is the mirror of God, the mirror of Allah, and we are here to clean the mirror so that we can brightly reflect it. We are here to be that presence. So, action is an essential. And spiritual life without action, spiritual life that is just about ourselves feeling good, is spiritual narcissism. We live in a culture that is filled with narcissism. And there's many cultures that are filled with narcissism, you know? I mean, a lot of people are interested in what's in it for me. What will help me to feel good? And that's a good starting point. But my spiritual practice, and I hope your spiritual practice, is not only so that I get in touch with the Christ within, but so that I can then take that power and bring it out into the world, to share it and interface it with the needs that I see in the world. So, our fifth unity principle is knowledge of these spiritual principles is not enough. We must live them. We must put them in action. We must live them out in everyday life. You know, that the 5 unity principles all make sense. There's only one power. That power shows up as each one of us. The third principle is that by the law of mind action, by that which I am focusing on, I am manifesting in my world. The fourth one is that by my prayer and meditation, I am aligning with that spiritual presence. And the fifth one is then I act on it. Otherwise, it's just spiritual narcissism. And I'm glad for, and I practice meditation, and I practice spiritual reading and all kinds of different spiritual practices, but it's not about just me feeling better. You know, it is important to do the inner work first, but it's an inner journey that then leads to the outer journey. Now, treating ourselves, the inner journey, Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist monk, was teaching a class leading in meditation during the Vietnam War. And he's from Vietnam. And he was saying that everything that we are holding in consciousness manifests itself in the outside world. And so some brave soul asked this spiritual master, asked Thich Nhat Hanh, so then are you somewhere in your consciousness creating the Vietnam War? And Thich Nhat Hanh went into the silence and meditated. And then he opened his eyes and said, yes, I am. That's taking responsibility. Unity in the path of spiritual evolution is teaching responsibility. That we're responsible for treating our own consciousness, and then we're responsible for how we interact in the world. Since I was about 13, I've been influenced by Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi. When I went to his museum in Delhi, India, the museum is progressive. So it starts with his childhood, and then he becomes a lawyer in South Africa, and then he goes back to India, and I followed this progression. And then there's a room at the end of the museum. And at the end of that room is a glass case that has the clothes that Gandhi was wearing when he was assassinated, with the blood still on it, and the bullet that shot him. When I went into that room, I was by myself, and I just sobbed. I was so touched by his commitment to truth. He stood up for truth when it looked like the Indian people had no power. The British Empire had taken over India, even though they were the minority. And many of the Indian people felt like they were powerless to do anything about what was going on in their world, in their country. Gandhi, through his spiritual practice, realized we have the power to do something. First, we grounded in spiritual principle. And we grounded in prayer. And then we stand in our truth, non-violently, but we stand in our truth, and we act together. And he asked them, what should we call ourselves? And one of them submitted the name Satyagraha, which means truth force or soul force. And that's what they did. They came to prayer meetings every day, and then they stood in the truth. And they changed their country. They changed the world. Gandhi it was very important to him to bring about integrity between our thoughts, words, and deeds. As this quote here says, happiness is what you is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. Too many people in our time say one thing, but they're doing something else. They may say that they believe in the idea of oneness, but in practice may not act like it. May not realize that we all are truly interconnected, that we all are the face of God. Gandhi went on to say, and then this next quote, "Service which is rendered without joy helps neither the servant nor the served. But all other pleasures and possessions pale into nothingness before service which is rendered in a spirit of joy." It's joyful. It's joyful to come out and be the salt. Salt is created to be the seasoning, and we are created to be the seasoning of the world. Have you ever watched TV, watched something going on in the news, or watched something that's happening in your life and said, somebody ought to do something? Why isn't somebody doing something? Again, if it comes to you, it's yours to do. You are the somebody. And several somebodies can do a whole lot. As this next quote states, "A small body of determined spirits, fired by an unquenchable faith in their mission, can alter the course of history." We saw it. We saw it with Mahatma Gandhi. We saw it with Martin Luther King Jr. We see it with anybody, any group of people who have an unquenchable faith in their mission. They can alter the course of history. You're not powerless. You're not. You're powerful beyond measure. You are the presence of God. Do you see it? Do you see it in each other? Do you see it in yourself? You're the presence of God. You're no small thing. You're here to be that salt of the earth. You're here to spread that love. That's why we're having this book study that's coming up. Some people find it challenging. Not everyone may choose to be a part of it, but, because it causes us to confront some of the things that are going on in our world. It causes us to confront our shadow side, individually and collectively. It's not fun to look at our shadow side. It's not fun to look at how some people have been treated. And along with that book, we have a unity study guide book that will help us to apply spiritual principles to this. Because it's all about the spiritual journey. I mean, if you're a spiritual narcissist, I love you. And I'm happy for your journey. But it's really time to get out of the salt shaker. It's time to be the salt of the earth, what Jesus called us to be. It's time to step up into that presence of God that we are, knowing that we are not powerless, that we are here to bring about change. I used to think, I'm going to be real honest, and I grew up in a very conservative, even somewhat fundamentalist church. My mom may be watching. You all are in my prayers. But I used to think, is Jesus crazy? I used to wonder that. Because he taught us, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And I would think, Jesus, are you nuts? Have you seen this place? You really expect God's will to be done here as in heaven? That's what you're calling us to? I'm surprised more people don't choke when they say the Lord's Prayer. I wonder if they even know what they're saying. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. If you think that Jesus was just about pie in the sky and just feeling better with your good old self, you missed it. It's about being that salt of the earth and helping to renew this place. And you may wonder, where do I begin? At any point. There's plenty to go around. It's a big pool. I used to teach swimming. I used to be a lifeguard with the YMCA. And I taught children swimming. And with the real little ones, first we just get them, they'd be standing on the edge of the pool, and I'd just be out there holding out my hands, but not touching their hands. They'd be reaching, let me touch your hand. Come on, jump. Because the first thing was like that leap of faith to just jump in. Now, some of them were really ready. I wouldn't even be watching. I'd be looking another way, and bang, a kid would land on me. They had absolute trust. Then there would be others, like I can remember this one girl, and she was trying to reach as far as she could without actually getting in. I'm asking you to jump in. Jump in. The water's fine. It's a joyful journey, but not always an easy one. But it's a worthwhile journey because there's something worthwhile for each and every one of us to do. Each and every one of us are to show up as this presence, to make a difference in our world. You are the light of God. You are the salt of the earth. Gandhi started with a group much smaller than this and changed the world. We can too, if we choose to. Thank you.